Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Langford, for inviting me. On March the 16th, 2023, the McAlester Police Department was preparing for a funeral to pay our respects and our honors to former Chief of Police Dale Nave. He was the Chief of McAlester for almost 20 years and hired a large percent of the officers that work there today. Before the funeral that morning, Shift Commander Captain Richard Parker failed to report to duty. He was found in his house deceased. After several hours at Richard's house, I sent several of our officers to escort Captain Parker to the medical examiner's office in Tulsa. On March the 17th, I sent 5 officers to escort Captain Parker from the medical examiner's office to a funeral home in Wetumpka. Our officers were met by officers from several agencies that joined the escort. As the procession was traveling south on US 75 through the city of Glenpool, Martin Rivas Rodriguez lost control of his vehicle as he was traveling north on 75. His vehicle jumped the guardrail and collided with Joseph Barlow's patrol unit, one of my officers. The collision hit with such great force, it destroyed the front of Joseph's police car. All of my officers tried to get Joseph out of the car. The damage was too extensive. Joseph was eventually cut out and transported by ambulance to St. John's Hospital in Tulsa. Mr. Rodriguez was arrested for driving without a license, and that's when it was discovered that he was an undocumented immigrant. Joseph passed away from his injuries sustained in the wreck on March the 20th. Joseph was kept on life support machines for 2 days because he was an organ donor. On March the 22nd, 5 of Joseph's organs were harvested, including his heart, his liver, and one of his lungs. These organs went to 5 other people. This tragedy was a great loss for our department and to our community. Joseph was an Army veteran, and he had only worked for the police department for less than 2 years. Joseph left behind a wife and a 1-year-old son, Chase and Hudson. In my career, I've worked patrol shifts, investigation divisions, and narcotics units. Drugs are obviously the greatest threat to my community. 23 years ago, while assigned to a narcotics unit, I was sent to Quantico, Virginia to get certified to be able to disassemble clandestine labs safely. At that time, methamphetamine was the main drug of choice in Oklahoma. People were buying and stealing pseudoephedrine and converting it to methamphetamine. About 20 years ago, Oklahoma made it illegal to purchase pseudoephedrine over the counter. It could only be purchased from pharmacies, and the purchaser had to show identification. This led to the end of Klan labs in our area. It has been many years since the last working Klan lab was discovered in Pittsburgh County. My agency works very closely with the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, and the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, OBN. These agencies have informed me that the narcotics that are present in our community comes from Mexico. Methamphetamine is still the most prevalent drug, but fentanyl is becoming more widely used. OBN told me that they seized 830.7 pounds of methamphetamine and 2.01 pounds of fentanyl in the year 2020. Last year, that number jumped to 3,549.39 pounds of meth and 122.72 pounds of fentanyl. That's enough fentanyl to kill every Oklahoma citizen 7 times. This places a great strain on law enforcement and the community. As the number of drugs available increase, unfortunately, the number of accidental overdoses also increase. In 2019, Oklahoma recorded 883 overdose deaths, and in 2021, that number jumped to 1,005. My department has had to supply every officer for the past 5 years with Narcan. Fortunately, many of my officers have been able to administer Narcan on several accidental overdoses and prevent many people from dying. Obviously, when there are more illegal drugs in the community, there is an increase in crimes, especially in property crimes. In my career, I've met thousands of people in need of assistance from law enforcement. Many of these have been victims of crimes. Some were just stuck in a bad situation and needed help. Many of these people have been undocumented immigrants. This part of our community is particularly vulnerable. In my dealings with this community, I've become aware of several reasons for this vulnerability, including language barriers, lack of trust in the police department, as well as other people taking advantage of them because of their reluctance to involve the police in their matters. I have personally met many victims that were hesitant to talk to the police, and I assume There are many more in McAlester that have been victimized and have not reported their crimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hearod. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us on the committee when I express my condolences to you and the law enforcement community in your area for your tragic loss. Mayor McCaa, in your testimony, you talked about the dangers posed by the load car drivers. These are the folks who drive at high speeds while smuggling humans or drugs. When this occurs, how does it impact law enforcement resources in your community? And you told us a little bit about how this impacts the residents of Sierra Vista, your daughter, your mother, your parishioners. What else does this mean for other residents throughout Sierra Vista?
Thank you for the question. One thing is tough to track border-related crimes within our city limits because most originates out in the county. Not being able to track the crime presents its own problems, such as how to migrate it. But when the load car and the pursuits happen, they all eat up our on-shift manpower for our police force. There are times that we only have 4 and 5 officers on staff, and it takes all of them to clear intersections or even to stop the vehicles through town or to get the vehicle stopped and make the arrest safely. If we get a load car, a vehicle stop, at least one or not even more officers, or even more officers is tied up with the arrest for about 3 to 4 hours. During the day, load car pursuits can pull our detectives off their assigned tasks and even our high-level staff off their assigned tasks. Border Patrol checkpoints have put a significant damper on pursuits. Having these checkpoints creates stash houses within our city limits where migrants are housed until the checkpoints go down to transport those migrants north. Stash houses picks up when the checkpoints are up, and they go down when the checkpoints are not there. Pursuits are less violent crime on the roads when the checkpoints are up. Checkpoints don't stop the pursuits, they deter them. With the increase of pursuits in Sierra Vista and the increase of public safety coverage, pursuits currently have moved to our east, which creates load cars going east, but those don't deter from Sierra Vista because they take wrong turns and come through our town. The pursuits are still constant wireless, regardless of where they are in the county. Pursuits can start far away and come in because Sierra Vista is the main artery going north. During drugs, as the committee says, drugs, the border issues is the most significant thing that affects Sierra Vista. It carries on from property crimes like shoplifting. The drugs come across the border, then they go to Tucson where they are cut up and they bring back down. One thing, Senator Sinema, I want to stop worrying about if my daughter get back home from volleyball practice. I want to stop worrying about if my mother get back home from Bible study. I want to stop worrying about, that's what keeps me up at night. That's what I worry about. When's the next citizen that's going to serve as a fatality because of these low car drivers? Thank you, ma'am.